Hello, my name is Ed Hawks, and this is the 17th edition of the show Listen Up Illinois, where we spotlight local Urbana-Champaign musicians. And today I'm pleased to have as my guest Michael Kammin, playing the fingerpick style guitar. Um, Michael, I guess I can start out with a question. Maybe how did you get interested in playing the guitar? Are you interested in music?
I got interested in music, I guess because a lot because of my family. My mom was pretty insistent on me playing the piano when I was a youngster. So I started out on that when I was about 5 or 6. I also have two older brothers who were both um, required to play piano. And then when I went into fifth grade, I joined the school band, also at, on, at, under the influence of my mother. I played the alto saxophone, and I also played in a lot of, or I sang in a lot of choirs growing up in school and things like that. And then when I was my oldest brother, who's about 6 years older than me, he picked up the guitar when he was in high school. He was in a rock band and things like that, and I kind of picked it up through him, so to speak. I acquired one of his older guitars when he sold it, and that's how I kind of got into it, and I followed his influence pretty heavily. He's also a fingerstyle player. And so that's kind of how I got into it. Some of the other instruments that I played, I've kind of given up. You know, I don't play piano anymore. I don't play saxophone anymore. I just kind of found that guitar was where I liked to be, so to speak. It sort of chose me, I guess. And that's kind of how it is. That's how I kind of got into music and playing.
So you kind of had the base of the piano, probably reading music and learning kind of the structure of music, kind of helped lead you into the guitar, then having all that knowledge.
Very much so, very much so. The piano being the first instrument that I learned, I think was a big key. Even though I don't play it really anymore, it's probably the best instrument for a young person to learn first, because everything is visual, everything is kind of laid out right in front of you. There's sort of a percussive element, a rhythmic element to it as well. So it's a very good instrument to learn as your first instrument.
Right. So all you young people out there,
That's
who are
right.
trying
That's
to,
right.
practice that piano. You may not like it, but try to stick with it.
That's right.
You have some more tunes for us?
Sure, sure. This next tune that I'm going to play is a song that I wrote. This is off of my last CD. The CD is called Cold Pines, and this particular tune is a tune that I wrote when I lived in Milwaukee. This was I wrote it for a barber that I used to go to when I used to go to a barber, and he was an older gentleman. He was in his 70s, and I had learned through the course of a few haircuts that he was an Italian immigrant who had came to the United States in the 1970s, but he had lived in Sicily during World War II, and his accent was extremely heavy, so it was very hard for me to understand what he was saying. But one thing that I picked up on was a story that he told me about how he was a youngster in Sicily at the end of World War II. So this is a tune about his story, and this is called Palermo. 9 years old, and I'm standing on a hill. I'm counting the airplanes, white stars on green paint, the target in sight. There's too many to count now for all my friends and I. American bombers they're flying high. Down to the coast they're gonna go. They're going down, they're gonna bomb Palermo. The Allies are tugging at the shoulders of Rome. Our general has gone, so please turn back. Don't bomb our shores. We never wanted this war. English and French, oh, they're just above the trees. Down to the coast they're gonna go. They're going down, they're gonna bomb Palermo. Well, just as I reach the crest of the hill, awaiting the shaking, the squadrons they veer out to the east, dropping their payload into the sea. American bombers, they're flying high. Down to the coast they're gonna go. They're going down, they're gonna spare Palermo. English and French, oh, they're just above the trees. Down to the coast they're gonna go. They're going down, but they're gonna spare Palermo. I think I'll do another one here. This next tune is another instrumental tune. This is also off of my latest CD. This is called East versus West.
you told me you play in open tunings.
Hmm.
So can you tell people a little bit about kind of how open tunings are different than the standard tuning on a guitar?
Sure, sure. An open tuning generally refers to a technique where you change the tuning of the guitar away from what is generally referred to as standard tuning. Standard tuning, in other words, is kind of the default tuning that people generally use on the guitar. So when you retune to an open tuning, what you're doing is changing the pitch that strings are tuned to form an open chord when you strum the guitar with no fingers down. So for example, I'll tune my low string down, and then I'll tune my fifth string down, and finally my high string. So now I have what's referred to as an open G tuning, which means I can strum the guitar with no fingers down and form an open chord rather than actually having to fret something to play a chord.
That's an open G tuning then?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what are the notes in an open G tuning?
From on the guitar, from low to high, from the sixth string to the first string, it would be D, G, D, G, B, D.
D, G, D, G. What's the second string?
The second string would be B.
Oh, B, just as usual.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And E. So the two high strings are the same.
Oh, the high one is D.
Oh, D. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you're only changing actually three of the six strings. The low two get tuned down to a D and a G respectively, and the high one gets tuned down to a D.
Okay. Gives you a nice chord right there.
Very much so. Yep.
Now, how is it different playing in an open tuning? Is there an advantage to that, you think? Or?
I think there are some advantages. One is that you can your fretting hand is no longer responsible for having to fret bass notes so much. So for example, now I can play kind of an alternating bass line like this without having to actually fret a chord. So you can start to do things like it frees up your fingers a little bit to not have to worry about so much.
Yeah.
So
You don't have to press down as many strings to make a chord as you would in
exactly.
standard tuning. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, there's infinite numbers of open tunings. I think. I mean, I've heard like John Fahey. I assume you're familiar with John Fahey.
Sure.
A lot of people may not, but he was a well-known guitar player. Not so much now, but back in the probably 60s, 70s, 80s, who used a lot of open tunings very
Absolutely.
creatively.
Absolutely. Yep. He used he used open G a lot. He used open C and open D. Those three, open G, open D, and open C, are probably the three most common open tunings. But there are certainly other ones as well. And there are also a lot of what I sort of refer to as alternate tunings, which are tunings where you change the tuning of the guitar, but it doesn't necessarily form an open major chord. It might form, some other type of chord, or it might not form a specific chord in the player's mind at all. It might just be it's facilitating some sort of music that they have in their head that they want to play.
Yeah.
So, but you're absolutely right. There's an infinite number of possibilities when you start to mess around with the way the guitar is tuned.
Right. Yeah.
So.
You have something in open G for us then? Since
Sure
you got
thing.
that?
Yeah, I'll play a tune. This is actually a Hawaiian slack key guitar tune. Hawaiian slack key guitar is a style of guitar that comes from Hawaii that used a lot of open tunings and a lot of alternate tunings. In fact, there's a lot of sort of legends that certain families of musicians in Hawaii would kind of invent a tuning and then write a lot of music in that particular tuning, but keep the tuning secret, so nobody could figure out exactly how they were doing it.
I think if you had a really good ear, you might, but maybe not. Maybe it's hard.
Yeah, so this particular tune, this is written by a guy named Sonny Chillingworth, and this is called Moa Ohane Dream Slack Key. I'll do another one here, open G. This one is this is a tune by one of my favorite guitarists, a guy named Leo Kaki, who was one of John Fahey's discoveries in a lot of ways. This is a tune, this is probably one of the slower tunes that he wrote, but it's still very beautiful in my opinion. This is a tune called Crow River Waltz.
if people were interested in playing in open tunings, how would you recommend they get started?
Um, well, there are a couple books available. In fact, I think there's a book that was written by John Fahey before he died about playing in open tunings. I can't remember the exact title of it, but if you did a search, internet search for some of his books, you would probably find some. Um, and of course, some of Leo Kaki's music is in open tunings, so if you purchase some of his books or transcriptions, you would certainly get a pretty good taste of some open tunings. Um,
Are they like in tablature form
hmm
then?
Yep, very much so. There's a great website called stropes.com, stropes.com, that has all of his printed music available. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. And those are probably the best resources to get started. It's it can be a big challenge because you feel like you have sort of abandoned what knowledge you might have acquired in playing in standard tuning when you retune everything, but um, the you kind of get to a certain point where you realize that you can transfer some of your knowledge that you have to whatever particular open tuning you're having in terms of sort of chord voicings and things like that. And another great way to get started with open tunings, and I'll get in a real shameless plug for myself, is to find a good teacher.
Yeah.
and I've teach beginning and intermediate fingerstyle guitar, and a lot of that material in that level is in open tunings, and I can help you out, and other teachers can help you out, sort of navigate them a little bit. And those are probably the two or three of the best ways to get started.
And how do they find you if they want to take a lesson?
They can email me through my website, which is michaelkammin.com. I teach at CV Lloyd's here in Champaign, so if you stop by CV Lloyd's, they should have some of my cards set out on the front counter, maybe not, but at any rate, they know how to get a hold of me. And so that's probably the best way to get into contact.
Now, like my last show, I had a guy playing what he called Piedmont style blues on the guitar, which is, I think, pretty much all in standard tuning, but
Sure.
it's still a finger picking style. Now, is the finger picking style that you use with open tunings a little different than that? He uses a lot of alternating bass, of course, with that style, and I just wonder. And he talked about having to learn patterns, finger picking style patterns. So is it kind of the same thing when you're doing open tunings?
Yes, very much so. A lot of those same patterns are still employed when you use open tunings. Just happens that it kind of opens things up a little bit for you. You can like I mentioned, it kind of frees up some of your fingers to play maybe more melodic things or do other sorts of things. Just provides you a little bit different freedoms than standard tuning would.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, you got something else for us then?
Sure. We'll tell you what. Why don't I? Speaking of John Fahey, I'll switch down to open C, which is another open tuning, and I'll do one of his tunes for us. So this is a tune called Sunflower River Blues, and this is one of the first instrumental guitar tunes that I ever learned. And I learned it, and I kind of thought that, you go through this period where you think that first tune is just, not cool or something. And then after a while, I realized how cool it was, and so now I just love to play it all the time, and can't believe that I ever allowed myself to be swayed like that. That was Sunflower River Blues. I think while I'm in open C, I'll do another tune in open C. This is written by a guy named Bruce Coburn, who is a Canadian guitarist and songwriter, and this is called Foxglove.
Now you write a fair amount of your own music, is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Instrumental as well as vocals?
Yep.
Both. So kind of what process kind of goes on in your head when you're dreaming something up? You know, how does that happen, and how does it get translated from the head to the fingers and into the guitar?
Well, that is a very good question. I think it's different for songs that I write that have lyrics and instrumental tunes. I think it's kind of two different processes to a certain extent. For instrumental tunes, it's almost a little bit easier for me. Because the way it generally starts is I find a small sort of nugget, or riff or melody, something of that nature that kind of catches my ear a little bit, and from there I have a little bit of music theory knowledge, so from there you can start to sort of harmonize that melody, add a bass line to it, add variation to it, sort of make it into something fuller and complete based on that sort of theory knowledge that I have. Sometimes I'll have sort of two or three different types of ideas kind of percolating, and I'll work to sort of connect them together a little bit if it sort of works. Like, for example, that tune East versus West that I played, it kind of has sort of three distinct sections that sort of, two of them sort of existed independently for a while for me, and then I realized that they really meant to be together, and so I figured out how to connect them in a logical way, and that just made the whole tune sort of click. So for instrumentals, that's kind of the general idea, is you get kind of a melody, a small melody or a small idea, and I can use theory to harmonize it a little bit or work in some other variation. With songs that I write, for me, it's much harder, writing lyrics and things like that. I find that I can't force myself to write songs. In other words, if I sit down and try to write something, it always turns into a complete disaster. But what sometimes happens to me is that they'll just kind of they'll come to me in waves. I'll get kind of sort of a similar thing. I'll have a little bit of a lyric in mind. You know, I'll have maybe one line, or maybe it's just one phrase. Sometimes it's even one word, and then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of stuff starts to flow out of that a little bit. It's almost kind of a stream of consciousness thing. And then when that happens, generally I'll almost write 2 or 3 songs in kind of one sitting, so to speak. Not literally one sitting, but maybe in the course of a couple days or a week or something, I might have 2 or 3 songs just sort of come to me because that I've sort of uncorked something in a way. And a lot of times with the songs with lyrics, I kind of have a small collection of sort of guitar. I refer to them as grooves, you know, accompanying parts, you know, little things that I've played, and they're not quite complicated enough to be an instrumental all by themselves, but they have kind of a nice rhythm and can really work well for a vocal accompaniment. And so I'll generally try to see what works with what, you know, and that's kind of the process, I guess, that I have. Everybody is a little bit different, but that's kind of what I've found works best for me.
Yeah, I had a friend one time that said if he got a melody in his head, he'd have to get up. If it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, he'd have to get up, get his guitar out, and start playing it.
Yep. If you don't, you risk forgetting it, you know, and you don't. That's like the worst, you know, when a melody or an idea presents itself, it's choosing you, you know. So you have to be aware of it and try to document it somehow and give it its sort of course of action.
So do you record it as you're kind of coming up with it, or do you kind of get the whole thing into one piece and then record it? I mean, I would think you might forget the first part by the time you get to the end of it or something.
I don't record it, and I don't find that I have a hard time remembering what it was. Usually, if I can sit down and play through it a couple times, I'll generally recall it.
Oh.
You know, the ideas don't come to me. I could see how that could be a problem if somebody was real prodigious, you know, and had a lot of ideas coming all the time. You would definitely want to sort of document them because you do risk losing them. But for me, they come so far in between that I don't have a problem remembering them. I'm usually excited that when they happen. So,
I mean, is that the same with words? Do you have to write those down?
Words I do write down. Yes, that's a little bit different story because obviously those are real easy to forget. You know, if something pops into your head and you don't write it down, and then the phone rings, you know, it's going to be gone. So those I do write down. Mm-hmm.
So you kind of write down the initial idea, then you can go back to it later and kind of develop it some more, kind of thing. Or
very much
do you
so.
Carry a notebook around with you? I know some people that carry a notebook around with them all the time, and you know they see something and they got to write it down. And
I don't carry a notebook. I should though, because what ends up happening to me is I'll get the idea and I'll look for the nearest piece of paper, and my ideas generally end up getting scrawled, you know, on backs of envelopes and Post-its and you know, grocery lists, and then they do get lost because then you throw that item out, and so I should carry a notebook, but unfortunately I don't.
Yeah, it's the story of the people that write it down on napkins, and you know,
yep, it happens.
There's a lot of creative people like that.
That's right. That's right.
So you have something else for us then?
Sure. Let me. I'll tune back to. What's that?
Do you have another original? Or?
Yeah, let me tune back to standard tuning, and.
Oh, you actually do play in standard tuning.
I do. This next one is another tune that I wrote. This is off of my CD. This has kind of a jazz feel, although I'm not a jazz guitarist. This is a tune called Sooner or Later. And I was kind of inspired to write this because it just always seems like, you know, we have so many things to get done, so many lists to check off, and things,
songs to write.
It just seems like, you know, you stop and wonder kind of what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? And so that was kind of the idea behind this tune. Well, sooner or later, this'll all pay off. The 7-day weeks, the well-spent hours, we'll have a home with a screen door, pink flamingos in the yard. We'll have a home. Sooner or later, you'll get the call, you'll catch the break, you'll be on stage. Just look around. This is easier every day, every day. Forget how lucky we are to have a roof over our heads and there's food to eat. Yes, our bellies they're fed in this place we call home. So this next one is another tune off of my CD, and this is a tune that I wrote about a farmer that I knew when I was growing up. I grew up in sort of rural Wisconsin, and I used to help a couple farmers, put up hay in the summer and do various other odds and ends. And this particular one was kind of a friend of my dad's. And he was an older guy when I knew him, which was when I was a kid. And I learned a lot from him. Probably the most important thing I learned was to never chew tobacco. And he sort of did this by way of negative example. He was a very, very memorable character, and this is a tune called Ernie. Ernie was an old man when I was a boy. His body gave way, but he just didn't care. Ernie was an old man. La da 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 da. And Ernie spoke of his way back in the day. He said she passed on now long ago, and she left me on this farm all alone. Oh, she left me here all alone. La da 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 da. I cried the day she died, the day she died. I told them I didn't, but I lied. Oh, how I cried when she died. And Ernie, he gets along fine. Next month he'll be 99, with a shotgun behind the door and 6 guns there in the silverware drawer. Oh, he keeps them in the silverware drawer. La da 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 da. Last time I saw Ernie, he was still in the fields. He was plowing his rows with a mismatched team and picking off crows with a sling. Oh, he could use a stone and a sling. La da 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 da. When they found Ernie, his boots were still on, in his favorite chair between the stoves and his overalls, with a pocket full of skull. Oh, he had a pocket full of skull. La da 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 da. I cried when Ernie died. When he died, I told them I didn't, but I lied. Oh, I cried when he died. I cried when Ernie died. When he died, I told them I didn't, but I lied. Oh, I cried when he died.
Very nice. I like that. I remember hearing that on your CD, so.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me. So the CD is called Cold Pines. Is that your first That's not your first CD?
It's actually
That's
my
your
second one.
second,
The first
okay.
one is called was called Strong Mind, and it's actually sold out. I don't have any more copies left. But you can download it on iTunes if you search on my last name, Kammin. Both records should come up. The first one's is actually an EP with 5 tunes on it, 4 instrumental guitar pieces and 1 vocal tune. And then the second one is Cold Pines, which is a full length, 12 tunes and actually 6 instrumentals and six songs. Completely coincidental that it happened that way, but it's a nice balance. So.
So they can also probably go to your website. I believe you have a website.
That's
so-
correct. Yep, you can go to michaelkammin.com and you can link directly to CD Baby, where you can buy the CD online, the actual physical thing, or you can also hop to iTunes from there and download any of the tracks from iTunes.
Yeah. Now, what are some places around town where you play live and in person?
I play at Strawberry Fields here in Urbana, usually about once a month on Saturdays. They have music Saturdays and Sundays, 11 till 1. I've played a couple times over here at Silver Creek, the restaurant, for the happy hour at 6 o'clock on Fridays. Aroma Cafe, I've played a couple times at the Cranert Center. Um, so Strawberry Fields is probably the most regular thing, but I get in wherever I can, wherever they'll have me. So if you keep an eye out on my website, I generally keep my schedule pretty well up to date. So.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank UPTV for letting me do this show. So can you take us out with one more tune here?
Sure. This is a Gillian Welch tune, and I'll end on this. This is called Everything is Free. Everything is free now, that's what they say. Everything I've ever done, they have to give it away, 'cause someone hit the big score, they figured it out. We're gonna do this anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Well, I could get a tip jar, gas up the car, try to make a little change down at the bar. Or I could get a straight job, I've done it before. I never minded working hard, it's who I'm working for. 'Cause everything is free now, that's what they say. Everything I have ever done, I have to give it away, 'cause someone hit the big score, they figured it out. We're gonna do this anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Every day I wake up humming a song. I don't have to run around, I can just stay right here at home and sing a little love song, my love to myself. If there's something that you want to hear, well, you can sing it yourself, 'cause everything is free now, that's what I say. No one has to listen to the words in my head. Someone hit the big score, I figured it out. I'm gonna do this anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Someone hit the big score, they figured it out. I'm gonna do this anyway, even if it doesn't pay.